Welcome to the Parsha Perspective. Each week, we will delve deep in a weekly Torah portion to find a practical and insightful way to enhance your daily life. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Rabbi Shalom Yamini, and each week we will look into the weekly Torah portion to find practical and insightful ways to enhance your daily life. This week's Parsha Perspective is in honor of the Refuah Shlema, the complete and speedy recovery of HaRav Amitai ben Shoshanna, Leah Mintche bas Gittel, Aban ben Naomi, and Shaul ben Berta. This week's Parsha Perspective is in loving memory of Avraham Ben Chai, Edward Ben Efraim, Shlomo Ben Edward, and Yirachmiel Daniel Ben Gedalia. May their souls be uplifted and may their memories be a blessing. This week's Torah portion is Parsha Kedoshim, in our hearts. Our Parsha begins with a very powerful statement, Kedoshim to you ki kodesh ani Hashem Elokechem. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. This is followed by the commandment of many laws, including the Mitzvah of charity and equality before the law, Shabbos, morality, honesty in business, honor and awe of one's parents, and the sacredness of life. We have the Mitzvah, v'yahavta l'reacha kamecha, to love your fellow as yourself, which according to Rabbi Akiva is a cardinal principle of the Torah. The great Hillel once said that this commandment, v'yahavta l'reacha kamecha, to love your fellow as yourself, is the entire Torah, and the rest is just commentary. However, a question comes to mind. Just before the essential mitzvah of loving your fellow as yourself, the pasuk writes something interesting. The pasuk says, Lo sa'aneh es achicha b'levavecha. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. But why did the Torah add this mitzvah if loving your fellow as yourself, v'yahavta l'reacha kamecha, encompasses the feeling of not hating your brother? Why do you need to add this mitzvah right before v'yahavta l'reacha kamecha? The Ibn Ezra, Rav Avraham Ben Meir Ibn Ezra, a leading commentary from the Middle Ages, answers this question by explaining the significance of loving your fellow Jew. He writes that the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed in 70 CE because of the hate between the Jewish people. Because unity is fundamental and necessary for the Jewish experience. Hence, the Torah mandates it from both sides. You shall not hate your brother in your heart, and you shall love your fellow as yourself. However, the Ramban, Rav Moshe ben Nachman, a leading scholar, philosopher, and Kabbalist, gives a deeper and more profound explanation. He writes that the Torah is teaching us the best path to seeing the value and beauty of every Jewish soul. The Torah begins by clarifying that even if a Jew is actively sinning and going against the Torah, we are not allowed to hate him. Rather, we must do what the pasuk says, you shall surely rebuke your fellow, but not bear a sin on their account. Meaning that if we think they will listen, we should rebuke and reprimand them for their sinful actions. But if it's understood that our words will fall on deaf ears, we must hold our tongue and not rebuke, because they will come to resent us for speaking out against their actions, but worse yet, gradually we might resent them for their disregard of our words. Hence the next pasuk says, do not bear a sin on their account, do not take revenge or bear a grudge against any members of your people. The Ramban continues that if we find no good reason to love this person, the pasuk ends off with something crazy powerful. Why? Ani Hashem. Love your fellow as yourself. Why? Because I am God. These last words teach us that we must find within ourselves and within our souls the capacity to see the value of God's creation. And although they may seem or even be extremely different, at their core we are all the same, an essential part of God's design. Unfortunately, we know what happens when these steps are not followed, as we are in a period of mourning. The Talmud in Yevamos details the horrific tragedy that happened to Rabbi Akiva's students. All except for 5 of the 24,000 students died during this period between Pesach and Shavuos for one reason. They did not have respect or regard for each other, despite their teacher declaring that loving your fellow as yourself is the most fundamental and cardinal rule of the Torah. In our daily life, we must realize that a major aspect of being truly happy is not allowing hate to stay in our hearts. Whether right or wrong, deeply resenting or hating someone primarily affects our happiness and well-being. For we begin to live and thrive off that dark energy and do things that we never thought we would. However, suppose we do not allow hate and animosity to seep into our hearts, we begin to realize that real happiness is a choice. And in fact, The harder it is not to hate, the more we experience God's love despite our many imperfections. There's a powerful quote by Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory. God does not prove his love for some by hating others. Neither, if we follow him, may we. Have a great weekend and good Shabbos. Thank you for tuning in to the Parsha Perspective. Check out our website, theparshaperspective.com. Send thoughts and comments to theparshaperspective@gmail.com. Till next time, thanks for listening.